What's going on, folks? Painless. Um, the Me Too movement. I I've shared the story. I've shared the story before on another video. Maybe I've done it in a couple of videos where I describe my experience, and we all saw. Well, I didn't really pay too much attention to it. I heard from a lot of women that I work with. Well, not, I mean, a couple women um, concerning now Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. And we saw the hoopla with that in his being accused of sexual assault by women in the past as he rose through the ranks of the American judicial system. And, I was somewhat indifferent to it in the beginning in terms of him being elected because you had the left and the right, you know, kind of jousting about whether this man should be on the Supreme Court. And we know the Supreme Court is a lifetime tenure position in which you reign a considerable amount of power. And basically, the Supreme Court issues rulings that affect every facet of our life. And I didn't give it too much thought. But then when I began to hear about the sexual assaults, the accusations, and we don't know if this man did these things. It's all he say, she say, hearsay. It reminded me of a story that I went through, something personal to me, painless, that I could relate to. I had a woman accuse me of rape in '98, and I'm just going to give you the story again in case you don't remember. I visited this woman, in fact, who was older than me. She was 4 years older than me, had a child, and this was before, obviously, in '98, this was before text messaging, social media, instant communication, if you will. And we spoke on the phone. I remember I was in the military. And we spoke on the phone. I had a friend that had relations with this female, and she was what she was. And she presented herself as such to me as well. And I saw a prime opportunity to get in where I fit in, if you know what I mean. And I went to her home. I went to her home, and we had sex. We had sex, and I had to be at formation the next day, and we did our stuff. I went to formation. I got up from her home, got in my car, and I went to formation in the morning. About 2 days later, I get a summons from my platoon sergeant saying that I need to go see Top. Now, any of y'all that been in the military, I'm prior Army, when you got to go see First Sergeant, Top, or whoever, whatever you call him or her, to be politically correct, it's not, it leaves you with this, oh shit, kind of moment. Like, what I got to go see him for? And I was in an all-male unit. I was in an army unit, a tank unit. And it was nothing but men. And my first sergeant wanted to speak. And when I got there, and keep in mind, I was an E3, a private E3, and my first sergeant wanted to get the rundown before I went in there and spoke to the two county sheriffs that came down that wanted to interview me. Not only were those two county sheriffs there, CID was there. Some of you are my brothers and sisters that listen to me and have prior military experience, whether you've been retired or spent some time in the military service, especially the Army. You know who CID is. Criminal Investigative Division. And I said, hey, Top, hey, I don't really know. He knew what was up, but he wanted to see if my story, because my first sergeant, like again, he was a combat vet, Desert Storm, came in right after Vietnam, and back in those times in the military, that's when I'm just going to say this, my generation, even from a social standpoint, me being the age that I am, I'll be 40 here in a couple months, I always say that my generation is the last generation that got our asses whooped in public. Nobody better than I. There was really no political correctness. I'm that last generation. And my first sergeant told CID basically, look, before you talk to my troop, I'm going to talk to him and see what the fuck is going on. You've come up here with allegations against my troop. He's a good troop. And I'm going to talk to them. And he was very forceful in the way he presented himself, per my section leaders and platoon sergeant and other NCOs that were in the company area trying to speak to me. And they dutifully obliged. So I told him, I said, hey, Top. He told me what was up. He got a gist of kind of what was going on. I said, hey, Top, I went and visited this female. We did our stuff. And I remember him saying, hey, Painless. He's from North Carolina. He's like, hey, Painless, well, did you strap up? Did you put something, did you check out? I said, hey, Top, she's 3-4 years older than me. She's older than me doing this stuff. He said, okay, now, all right. I just want to make sure when you go up in here with these folks that you tight, that I ain't got to worry about no mess up in here. And then we got to get these officers involved and all this stuff to the full. I said, hey, I'm confident. I'm telling you what I did, Top. I went to this woman's house. We talked. She invited me over. We did our stuff. I stayed over, came to formation, got up after we did our stuff, came to formation, and 2 days later, I don't know what's going on, but I'm here in your office answering to you. He said, all right, Painless, okay. All right, Private Painless, all right, go on in there. So we walked out of his office. I walked out before him. He walked out. He closed his door. He said, all right, go on in there. And told CID basically, okay, y'all straight to question my troop. So went in there into an office within the orderly room, which is the company area, orderly room office somewhere up at headquarters, company headquarters. And I'll never forget, had those two sheriffs, county sheriffs from the county the female lived in, because this was across county lines, and had a white CID officer and a black CID officer. And when I mean officer, I mean that they were, they were two enlisted. They weren't officers, but they were two CID enlisted men, individuals. And went in there. I got grilled for like 3 hours. And I said, the out of all those law enforcement personnel that were there, the ones that gave me the most trouble, the one that gave me the most trouble was the black CID officer, which is really a military individual that is allowed to wear civilian clothes, everyday street clothes, to catch criminals and things of that nature. They run different types of stings and stuff like that on base to catch criminals or people who are breaking the law. And he gave me the most shit out of that time. Here I'm at E3, scared out of my mind, being accused of rape, which was what was presented to me. This woman accused me of raping her. I was interviewed by the two county sheriffs that came down from her county. I was interviewed also by CID. I was interviewed again by another sheriff with CID in the room. I was interviewed again with CID just in the room. I was interviewed again with just those two county sheriffs, who I might add were two white men in the room as well. So I was interviewed in different, various law enforcement authorities. And after 3 hours, 3.5 hours, whatever have you, my story was so tight, so consistent, that after a while, just to get into that officer from the CID, the black officer that gave me so much hell and trouble, it was found out that this woman was lying. In fact, just to wrap this story up, because this is not the mainstay of this or focal point of this video, those two officers, those two sheriffs rather, from her county said, you know what, your story, and they didn't give me no trouble. Those two sheriffs didn't give me no problems. They said, you know what, Painless, we're going to wrap this up. They asked me, did I ejaculate in her? I said, no, I was strapped up. I had a condom on, and no, it wasn't that. And, it was something to one of the sheriffs said, well, if you're going to rape somebody, the last thing you're doing is trying to put on a hat. That's what he told me. And we all three of us, this was the time where I was in the room with those two sheriffs. Keep in mind that I told you earlier that I was interviewed by CID, a mixture of the CID and the sheriff's officers. And then this CID by themselves, no sheriff. Then I was interviewed by just the sheriffs. They said, we're going to wrap this up. We figured this female is, and they was like, did you know her long, man? Now we got into more and more relaxed. They were calling me man, and, they're like, did you know her long, man? And, why would she do this shit? This is fucked up. They got real relaxed towards me, those two sheriff officers that came down from her county. And I said, I've known her probably about a month through an acquaintance of mine, which, again, was my partner who had already had relations with her. And she was just basically somebody that was older than us that we were able to sex and get benefits sexually from. My partner who lived down the barracks hallway from me and myself. And they said, we're just gonna wrap this up. This is crazy. If anything happens or anything updates, we'll be here. We'll let you know. But right now, you're clear to go, man. Sorry you had to fucking deal with this shit. That's what one of the sheriffs said. You know, and I never saw those sheriff officers again up till this day. And I was up and down that particular state. I got, what was this, 98? I didn't PCS from there until '01, right before 9/11. So, I share that personal story to show that what I saw with Kavanaugh, and I have no qualms with him reacting the way that he did. Some people say, you know what, you're a Supreme Court justice or a nominee, you should show a level of restraint and things of this nature. I say, you know what, when somebody is accusing you of a crime to that degree, I didn't fault Kavanaugh one bit. This man has a family. This man has trekked through, and regardless how you feel about the judicial system, politically or socially, this man has made something of himself. And I looked at some of the accuser, one of the accusers, come to find out this female is a high-level doctor. And let me say this. You can go through a catastrophic event and still maintain, you can still organize your life and prepare your life in a way of progression, positivity, and upward mobility. And now you want to bring these accusations. And I've said this about men in America and masculinity in America. It's under attack. No one likes a strong alpha type male, and I'm not talking about running around beating guys up, telling women you should only be barefoot and pregnant, and all this type of jazz. I'm just talking about carrying yourself, holding certain truths, having a demeanor about yourself that is masculine without being a jerk. That is shunned on these days. That is shunned upon these days. And I'm so thankful that those men were able to see past that. I'm not confident in 2018 that that would be such. If a young man or if myself went through that same ordeal right now. I'm not sure. But this whole Me Too movement is a farce. It is a way for women to seek, women who indulge in that type of rhetoric to seek validation, who may not be getting by or really being successful in the way that they seem fit. And the last card to pull is I've been accosted, I've been assaulted, I've been raped. It's the end thing to do. It's kind of equivalent to what white people, racist white people say about black people who so-called pull this proverbial race card. Now you have it with this Me Too movement, and the difference is you have not only white women, because white women spearhead this type of nonsense. They're the front runners. They're the forebearers. They wave the guidon of fucking Me Too, and I'm going to make felonious accusations at all cost, and all other women fall in line behind that guidon for various reasons. White, Asian, Hispanic, whatever have you. other white women from other European countries, they follow this guidon of nonsense, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. So I sympathized with men that have to endure that. And let me say this, guys, this is just not, this is an issue that all men deal with, regardless of background, ethnicity, religion. Okay, so I mean, that's why I'm reluctant, and maybe that's my bias of dealing with that situation in which I just described personally, in which I went through. But it's unfortunate. Now you take my little story. Painless is I'm this little guy. You can multiply that by however you want, by the thousands here in America of men who don't, whose stories aren't believed. That get brushed under the rug, or these guys get found guilty, serve jail time, have a scarlet letter, put on their name, in their jacket, in their file, and didn't do anything. And now you have all these, these female Hollywood stars saying they're not going to, you know what? It's comical. It's an attention. Look at me now. These women have nothing to do with their lives, but to make these type of accusations. Now, with that being said, I don't put away, or I don't downplay women who have actually been raped, sexually assaulted, or what have you. Those guys that do that, or women that do that, because women do rape men, should be prosecuted under the full extent of the law. No qualms about that. I'll sit on the jury. But this idea, this whole, and Bill Cosby, I'm just going to say that name. That Weinstein guy, who's that other guy who was supposedly messing with young boys? One of those actors, Caucasian guy. Those, if they did it, they need to be prosecuted. But don't be a armchair sympathizer because you hear sexual assault and you look at a guy and you look at a female that has conjured up some story from 30 fucking years ago that has amassed all type of prestige, wealth, status, and make a determining decision that this guy is guilty. And that's what we have going on here, right here in America, where masculinity has been shunned, where masculinity has been looked down upon. I resent that, and I will fight against that. Peace.